The name of my sermon today is Valued Objects in Nature are pruned or they're refined. Several years ago, I had a duty that I didn't want to do, but I had to do it. And that was to send my son off to war for the first time. And it scared the heck out of me. And he was just good old Brian, happy-go-lucky and ready to go, and a new adventure. And I kept telling him, now, don't trust anybody. If somebody says duck, duck. Don't be looking around for a duck, duck, okay? And telling him all these things and just getting more and more nervous and worried about him. And that went on for over 10 years, worried about him. But he called me up about 2 days after he got there. And he was finally going out to his base where he was. And he was in Riyadh, where all the bad fighting went on for all those years. And he was in the infantry, so he was on the front line the whole time. And he called me up and he says, Dad, he says, we're flying into Baghdad and they're shooting at us. They're shooting missiles at us just when we're landing. Hadn't done a thing to them, Dad. We're just landing. So we get down, we get assigned to barracks that we're going to be in. It was a 20-foot container. Him and one other guy, air-conditioned, movies, stereos, all this real tough military stuff. And so they go in there, and they're kind of still wound up from the long flight and everything. So they decide to watch a movie, Pearl Harbor, this last movie they had, which some of you know has a lot of explosions and gunfire and screaming and all this kind of stuff going on. And they're sitting in there watching the movie, and every once in a while their building shifts one way and it shifts another way and everything like that. And finally the movie ends and they're walking outside and the all clear signal's going. And his sergeant comes up to him and says, where have you been? He said, we've been in the room watching a movie. You told us we're on break. He said, didn't you hear that air raid thing? No. Well, and they had a big mortar attack. So he says, here we are, Dad, just taking a break, and they're trying to kill us. And then he says, and then we're flying out to Mosul, and we're in a helicopter, and they're shooting at us. With everything they got, they're taking shots at us, shooting at us, and we're shooting back at them, and everything like that. And he says, Dad, I landed on the ground, and I realized these guys are trying to kill me. And that's when I finally realized that he was going to be okay, because he realized he had to keep on his toes. And the Lord blessed him all the years that he was over there and through all the firefights and terrible things that he witnessed. And he made it through there. But he was also being tested. And he was tested being in the furnace of God. And he came through that. And I was so proud of him. And all his years that he was over there and all the things that he went through, some of them he can't even talk about. He won't talk about. And they changed him mentally, but he's still our son, and he's still a good son, and we're so happy and proud to have him down. Isaiah 48:10 tells us, behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. The furnace fires are not to destroy, but to refine, ennoble, sanctify. Without trials, we would not feel so much our need of God and his help, and we would become proud and self-sufficient. In the trials that come to us, we should see the evidence that the Lord's eye is upon us and that he means to draw us to himself. It is not the whole, but the wounded who needs a physician. It is those who are pressed almost beyond the point of endurance who need a helper. Think of the low parts in your life that happen just about every day, or happen just, it could be a sick relative. It could be somebody cuts you off on the road, something goes on at work, or you're out of work or something like that. Think of all those afflictions that happen to you, and they're coming to you. Why? Because the Lord loves you. The Lord loves me. The Lord loves us. And he gives these afflictions to show our strength, to show our character, to show that we can stand up and say, yes, I am a Christian. I am proud. I am the son of God, and he leads me in all that I do. And Jesus and the holy angel are there to take care of us, to guide us. When trials come up at us, most of us call our helper in our thoughts, not realizing that we're just talking to ourselves. Think of that voice in your head that you talk to sometimes. He can be crazy. I know mine can. Mine does some stupid things and says some stupid things. And we're not realizing who we're talking to. The one who's got us into the problem originally is the one we're talking to, ourselves. Several times in my life, I found myself depressed, lost, and I would talk to that voice in my head thinking I was asking God for help. At that time, though, in my life, God was not in complete control of my thoughts. Satan was, and he was trying to destroy me. And the messages I've got from my mind were terrible at that time. And I don't mean 50 or 60 years ago. I mean just a couple years ago, of hurting myself, of ending my life, of leaving my church family, leaving my wife. These terrible things would come into my mind. And I would just think for a second, and I finally started asking God, why are you answering me like this? Why is this your answer? And it struck me that wasn't God, because God wouldn't talk like that. And I realized that was Satan talking to me, telling me to do these bad things and to think these bad things and to think these tests of life were so insurmountable I couldn't surpass them, I couldn't beat them, and that I should give up. And that's not what Jesus wants you to do. How far does Jesus push you? He pushes you to the point that you're still in control, that you can still say no. And he gives you that strength, and he tells you how to use it. God was right there when I figured out what was going on, and he has helped me with him through many recent problems. When you start telling yourself to hurt yourself or that God hates you, you're not listening to the right voice. And put that right voice in charge of your mind. The fact that we are called upon to endure trials proves that the Lord sees something in us very precious. And a lot of people don't realize that we are precious in the sight of the Lord, that we are his children. You know, no matter how many times I had to go get Brian or discipline Brian or something like that, I was still proud of him, and he was still my son. He wasn't always happy to see me, but he understood when it was all over. If he saw in us nothing whereby he might glorify his name, he would not spend time in refining us. Do not take special pains in pruning garbage weeds and brails. And God does not cast worthless stones into his furnace, only the valuable ore that he needs to test. And that's what our life is. We are of value. And don't let anybody tell you you aren't. And in this world, it is so sad, but that's what the world's teaching everybody through the internet, through online trainings and all these other things like that. They're not teaching the value of mankind, the value of one person. And every one of us is worth something. The blacksmith puts iron and steel into the fire that he may know what manner of metal they are. The Lord allows his chosen ones to be placed in the furnace of affliction in order that he may see what temper they are of and whether he can mold and fashion them for his work. So, using you as an example in your own life, if you can make it through this particular trial, you can make it through another trial, or you can help somebody through this same trial that they might be going through. But God is going to use you. He's going to use you a lot. It may be that much work needs to be done in your character building, that you are a rough stone which must be squared, polished, before it can fill a place in God's temple. Now, who do you think of when you say a rough stone fitting in any place? Elders over there going, me. So but no, he has a lot to work with. He has a lot to work on. I'll admit that. And he's been working on me for 40 years now. And I still have several rough edges and don't fit into all situations. Y'all don't have to be going like this. Make me feel better, but I understand what you're saying. It may be that much work is needed to be done on your character building, that you are a rough stone which must be squared and polished before it can fill a place in God's temple. You need not be surprised if, with chisels and hammer, God cuts away the sharp corners of your life and of your character until you are prepared to fill a place he has for you. You know, sometimes you wonder, too, how long the Lord has planned these things out that they would fall into place. I mean, sometimes it's years. I can see this where a subject came up and I studied it and I remember it and I did all these things with it, and then nothing. And then years later, somebody brings up a Bible reference or they talk about something in the Bible, and it turns that little switch in my head, like, oh yeah, I know about that. And I can relay that and refer that. And God gives me that strength. He gives me a good memory. No human beings can accomplish this work. Only by God can it be done. And be assured that he will not strike one useless blow. His every blow is struck in love for your eternal happiness. He knows your infirmities, and he works to restore, not to destroy. Most of the time, these tests come upon us, we take it very personal, and we start complaining to ourselves again. Who are we talking to? Remember, being tested is coming from God, and to know your work, and with this in a part of a test, turn to God always, and he will lead you from your wrong. When trials arise that seem unexplainable, we should not allow our peace to be spoiled. However unjustly we may be treated, let not pressures arise by indulging in the spirit of retaliation and injuring ourselves. We destroy our own confidence in God and grieve the Holy Spirit if we don't follow the track that God has us to follow. This is by our own side. There is by our own side a witness, a heavenly messenger who will lift us up a standard against the enemy. He will shut us in with bright beams of sunlight of righteousness. Beyond this, Satan cannot penetrate. He cannot pass his shield of holy light. This is taken from Sister White's Signs of the Time, August 18th, 1909, telling us the importance of being tested in the furnace, in the afflictions of life, and how we as Christians must shine through these things. And some of them can be physically detaining to you or obstructing to you, which some people can hold that against God. But these are all things, are small things. When you read about all the healing that Jesus did, like we did in our Sabbath school today, with the woman that he called a dog, he called her a dog and her family dogs in front of other people. And she said, Master, you're right, but doesn't the dog eat the crumbs of the master's table? And what did Jesus say? That's right, by your faith, by your faith. How many people would have thought maybe I wouldn't have answered it like that? They'd have gotten mad or upset or something to hold it against God. And he's not there for that. He's there to heal us, make us gentle. Now, I'm looking out today and seeing this vast crowd appear. I realize that word must have gotten out that I had the sermon this week. But we want to remind you all, please, stay in contact with those that aren't here this Sabbath, that aren't here any Sabbath, and call them and let them know that they are missed by their family and that we all need to stay together. These times are getting short, so very short, and so many people are sick and ill and angry. There's so much hate in this world, it's unbelievable. People that just hate you for being what you are. And it's sinful. It really is. But God's there for us. And we always want to pray that we are a reflection of the light that Christ casts on this earth. That we can't stand anywhere next to him. You know, like John the Baptist said, he couldn't even tie his sandals. So are we. We are not anything like that. We can't even get as close as he did. But what can we do? We can walk like him, and we can reflect that light and let people know that we are a caring person and that we can help them and that we are here to help.